Hi, this is Scott Wilkinson, host of Home Theater Geeks. In episode 284, I chat with Bob Katz, recording and mastering engineer, about some of his recent projects and the high-res mafia. So stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Home Theater Geeks is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is Home Theater Geeks with Scott Wilkinson, recorded December 10th, 2015. Episode 284, Bob Katz on audio. This episode of Home Theater Geeks is brought to you by Drobo, a family of safe and expandable yet simple to use storage arrays. Drobos are designed to protect your important data forever. Visit drobo.com/twit and use the code TWIT100 to save $100 off a Drobo Mini, Drobo 4-Bay, or Drobo 5N. Hey there, Scott Wilkinson here, the home theater geek and editor of avsforum.com. This week, my guest geek is Bob Katz, a very well-known recording and particularly mastering engineer, and we're going to be talking about his work in recording music and all sorts of cool stuff like that. Hey, Bob, welcome to the show.
Nice to see you, however, virtually.
Indeed. You're on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast, but the wonders of technology let us talk together, and I really appreciate that.
Can you tell when I'm slouching?
Yeah, you're slouching pretty good there.
Right.
Hey, those who are logged into the live stream at live.twit.tv or logged into the chat room at irc.twit.tv, more in particular, can post questions for Bob as we go, and I'll pass along as many as I can. Already gotten a couple.
So maybe
Sorry,
they
Bob?
want to, maybe they want to know a little touch of my history, like 1 minute worth of.
Oh, wait, we're going to start there for sure. For sure.
Yeah. Okay.
We're definitely going to start there. I just want to make sure that everybody knows that if you do post a question and we get to it later in the show, it helps if you put my screen name in your message. And my screen name is my name, Scott Wilkinson, all spelled out, no spaces. And that will have it show up in a different color on my screen, and it'll draw my eye to it. So, Bob, let us start where you suggested, which is a little bit of your background, experience, how you came to be in the position you now are in.
Sitting on this chair, that's about
Yes,
40
exactly.
years.
What'd you have for breakfast?
But cereal flakes.
Yes.
No, starting, I was always an audiophile. And in the 70s, I started recording groups direct to two-track. And I assembled a number of really great stereo systems. And then in 1970, from 72 to 77, I worked as the recording engineer, the chief engineer of Connecticut Public Television, did every kind of TV show you could imagine, meaning recording and making them. Then I moved to New York, and to make a long story short, joined up with Chesky Records as the man who made the Chesky sound, the first Chesky sound, and recorded 100 to 150 compact discs for David. And it became the premier audiophile record label, I think.
It sure did. It sure did. And then, boy, that sound is phenomenal. So I'm glad we know we have you to thank for it.
David said, Bob, I want to use this kind of microphone and I want to record it this way. Can you do it? I said, oh, absolutely. That's what I do. So he likes to produce. He does the big thinking, and I do the nitty gritty. And then I moved to Florida and did a few recordings up in New York, but David really didn't like the inconvenience of flying me up and back and the quick setting up of all the schedules and so on. So we haven't parted ways. We're still very good friends, and I see David at least once or twice a year. But I'm not really recording for Chesky anymore. He's doing some great stuff, has moved to binaural, doing great gear. I designed an A to D converter for them, and the world's first 128 times oversampling A to D. If that doesn't sound geeky, I don't know.
Oh, well, hey, we're all geeks on this bus for sure.
Okay, and I have a patent.
No kidding. Wow.
Oh, yeah. I have a U.S. patent on a process called the K stereo and K surround, which are at this point is sold as a plugin in use by recording and mixing and mastering engineers around the world.
Huh.
And
how do you spell that? Is it just the letter K or?
if you do a Google for K-stereo, I'm sure it'll look up. Yeah. And now I have a great room for listening to music or surround sound, and I mix and master. I have a mixing room, and that brings us up to today.
It does. In fact, let's take a quick look at your room while we're talking about it. This is, I think you call it Studio A.
That's right.
And we have a photo of that. We want to show everybody to see where it is that you actually hang your hat. There it is.
Isn't that pretty? That is so pretty. It's a wide angle shot, and although the tilt up at the top looks like the ceiling is tilted, no, that's not true. You're tilted. That's
oh, I must be. Yeah.
Yeah. The loudspeakers. You want to hear a little bit about the equipment?
Please.
Okay. On the wall, you see 4 Mondo traps by a company called Real Traps. The left main speaker to the left of the curtain is a Revel, or do you say Revel? I really wouldn't know.
I always say Revel myself.
Yeah, and I say tomato, so it must be. Okay. Anyway, it's a Revel. I forgot how you called it, so I'll just let it go on. It's a Revel Gem Ultra, which is their smaller speaker that could be potentially mounted on a wall. It goes down flat to 60 hertz. And on the floor at the left and on the right are the 2 JL Phantom F112 subwoofers.
Nice subs.
They are incredible subs. You know that they can do a 4-inch excursion? Yeah,
wow.
when we play effects movies, it shakes your pants legs.
Now, Creamy Corncob in the chat room is commenting, and I was going to as well, that not only are they great subs, but they're corner loaded. You've put them in the corner.
I want to talk about that.
Yes, please.
It up in the corner. People have said, "Oh my God, you can't corner load these things. It's going to have big boom and boost." Well, okay. What we have, I could go on about the amplification, but there's about something like 5,000 watts total amongst all the speakers, and a dedicated 100 amp service that I designed and put in. So I can play my Discovery shuttle launch recording at full shuttle launch levels without dimming the lights. I was waiting for that to happen before. We used to dim the lights when the subs would hit their full peak. I said, we've got to put dedicated power in here. And it's like we gained another 3 or 4 dB, doubled the power of everything just by putting in a good power line.
Wow.
Think about it. I mean, you say, I've got a 500 watt amp. I got a 10,000 watt amp. If you don't have the power to drive it, forget it. Doesn't matter. Okay, so what were we going to talk about? Oh, yeah, why are the subs in the corner?
Corner loading, yeah.
Okay. I don't like that term corner loading, I guess. They're there because it's produced. Okay, the room has a cathedral ceiling. At the front, it's 12 feet high, and in the back, it's 23 feet high. Let me repeat that. The room has a cathedral ceiling, starts at 12 feet, which is incredibly ideal, and then ends at 23 feet in the back. So there
twice as tall.
Just about. And there are no floor to ceiling reflections to worry about. Okay. However, in the front, actually the lengthwise from front to back varies from 18 to 21 feet. And while that's a really, really great room, and it's turned out to be a great room, It has its base problems, as we all do. And so at the listening position, there is a dip at about 50 hertz, which corresponds with a 22-foot length. And
wavelength, yeah.
that's right. And so I painstakingly moved the subwoofers around, inch by inch, Niagara Falls. Anyway, slowly I turned the subwoofer.
Yes, yes.
And till I found the exact spot where the 50 hertz was attenuated the least. Okay?
Okay.
And the rest of it is easier. It's a lot easier to attenuate peaks than it is to bring up a dip, as you probably have learned. And
absolutely.
Maybe it's time to look at the frequency response graph, Mr.
Yeah, there's
Engineer.
a correction graph. Let's take a look at that.
What is your engineer's name? So I can call him
there
by
it is.
name. Okay. In brown is the original frequency response of the room. And you can see that corrected by a program called Accurate. I know it's pronounced weird, but it's spelled Acourate, and a companion program called Accurate Convolver. You can see that the end response at the listening position has been reduced to plus or minus 1 dB relative to the target. So that's a remarkable, I mean, you don't see that kind of thing anywhere. It's flat. It's about -3 at 16 hertz. So we started with what you see in brown, and we ended up with what you see in red.
That's amazing. Now, we all, as home theater geeks, those of us who are involved in home theater know a lot about, or at least are very familiar with, room correction algorithms like Odyssey, Dirac.
Can I say that? Yawn.
You're yawning. You don't dig Dirac, huh?
I spent a lot of time, a whole year, comparing up my pure analog system against a digitally corrected system until I decided finally to convert completely to digital correction. So I was quite skeptical myself to begin with. Not that I'm a Luddite. I have a lot of digital processing, as you know. But as a classic audiophile, I need the purity of tone and the depth and all those other good stuff. And for me, the one correction program that did not overcorrect and produced perfect results the first time was Accurate. So you can talk about everything else, but I won't think about it. I've been through it all.
Okay. Magpie in the chat room is asking, what does that subdued peak, and I saw a couple of them there, one at 50, one that looked like more like 80. What does that subdued peak cost you in terms of phase distortion?
Well, you see, Accurate has an excess phase correction. It's incredible. I didn't shoot for you some screenshots of the impulse response and the step response of the room, but if you go to my Facebook page, Bob Katz, just one word, at least I think it is Bob Katz, one word, or just look up Bob Katz. You can see a conversation that I started on that page showing the impulse response, the phase response, the phase response is not up yet, but who was it who asked the question again?
A fellow by Magpie.
Okay, Magpie, phase is not a problem with the system. It has an extremely tight linear phase impulse. The crossover is a very steep linear phase crossover, and phase anomalies have been corrected because this is an FIR filter. Odyssey is not FIR. Dirac is not FIR. Accurate, there are only two that I know of, I could be wrong, that are true FIR filtering. Accurate is one of them. The other one is Audio Lens, who you may have also heard of. And the FIR is capable of phase correction. Now, it's true. If you take a simple, what they call minimum phase, can I talk in geek language? Can we be frank? Okay, if you take a simple, ordinary minimum phase equalizer, when you boost it, it tends to move the signal forward in time. When you cut it, it tends to move the signal back in time. And that's not good because it screws up the image.
Yep.
But Accurate Convolver, which implements the filters, is capable of doing an amazing amount of correction, such that what originally, if you go to the Facebook page, you can see it, what originally looked like an impulse that was, or a step response that looked like kind of like this, turns into a single, or virtually a single sharp positive going peak, followed by a natural decay. And that is technology that really was not implementable or possible until about 5 years ago.
Batosa, is it true that Accurate comes from a company called Audio Vero in Germany?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Batosai, thank you very much for putting that in the chat room. That's Audio Vero, AUDIOVERO.de/EN for English.
You got it.
And you'll find Accurate there, ACOURATE. Interesting spelling.
Yeah. It's neat because it's different, and I think he found a good name. Better than the name of one of my equalizers called Better Maker. What a weird.
Yeah, that's a strange name, all right. Yeah. They're kind of tooting their own horn there, aren't they?
Right. So, well, anyway, Accurate is worth investigating. Absolutely. Yeah.
Douglas Waits in the chat room is asking, given a room which is pretty good but still has a few bass lumps, shall we say peaks or nulls, would you still suggest something like Accurate, or rather just let your ears get used to the lumps and accommodate accordingly?
Oh, that's a leading question.
You're not representing Accurate here. You're just saying you used it and you got really great results.
Yeah, well, without question. I have the ability to switch between an uncorrected system with just the digital crossover in Accurate and the time alignment. So it takes the subs and the mains, times aligns them, and sharply cuts it, sharply does the linear phase crossover at 80 hertz. I can switch back and forth between that and the fully corrected system with all the EQ and the excess phase correction. And this is not a geek thought, folks. This is an audiophile point. Suddenly, the uncorrected system sounds smeared, unless you have something like planars or quads or some other single driver kinds of loudspeakers, although the magnaplanars are not single driver, at least the mid-range is a big, large driver. Unless you have one of the very few loudspeakers that is not your traditional cone loudspeaker, you're going to get these weird phase and time issues that Accurate can correct. And in the end, the system just sounds more open, clearer, better transient response, and retains the pure tone. It's a no-brainer.
Jared555 is asking, did you have any issues with latency from FIR filters?
Oh, that's the hidden problem. Okay.
Hey, man, I told you we were all geeks on this bus.
You betcha. You betcha. I have almost 1 second of latency at 96 kilohertz. Well, here's the good news.
90 kilohertz? Who cares?
96 kilohertz sampling.
Oh, sorry.
At 44.1 kilohertz sample rate, it's even longer. Okay.
Wow.
All right. This can be a problem for people who are doing editing or mixing or mastering like me, if you're trying to correlate the waveform to what you hear. So I have another system. I can push a button and switch to low latency just to do the edits and then instantly switch back. Okay, almost a pure analog system, but it's an IIR system. So that's an issue there. However, if you just want to hear the best playback, the media players, some of them have convolvers built in, and the Dr. Brueggemann, who is the developer of Accurate, worked with the people who designed J River. I assume people here are very familiar with J River Media Center. Okay.
Yep.
J River has been capable of running the convolution filters that are inaccurate from quite a long time ago. And so I do all of my media playback, Blu-ray playback, everything in J River, running the convolver in there with the accurate filters. And J River knows the latency, delays the video until it matches the audio, and it's a perfect playback.
Douglas Waits says, sounds like you just cost me €300, Bob. Thanks. By the way, hello from Poland.
I recognize Douglas. Douglas, welcome. Douglas used to live in Scotland. He's a great musician, and I've done 2 albums with him. And hello, Douglas. Hello back.
Excellent.
Okay, the thing is, what did Spider-Man say? With absolute power comes great responsibility. Okay? So, as it is with Accurate, now there's a forum, and there are lots of people to help you, and Uli to take you through it. Just be aware, this is not the kind of thing you can plug and play and go through, okay? You have to take time to learn it. Even after a couple or 3 years at this point, maybe more, of using Accurate, I'm still learning new things. It's amazing. Yeah. So it starts off good and it gets even better.
Even better.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I want to spend a little time here talking about some of the, you mentioned that you had actually recorded with Douglas Waits, and I wanted to
record with him. I mastered 2 of his albums.
Mastered 2 of his albums. So I'd love to hear a little bit about some of the other artists that you've worked with, and we actually have some audio examples to play, which is really cool. I think it's a first for Home Theater Geeks. So you remember
they're stereo.
They're stereo, and we're going out Skype here. So they are WAV files. They are uncompressed files, but of course, when they go out Skype, they will get compressed in one way or another.
And Skype, I just realized Skype is not even stereo, is it?
I don't think so. I'm not 100% sure, but in any event, it'll give us a little sense. So take us through a couple of the artists that you sent some audio examples of.
Well, let's test one right now. Why don't you hit Feel the Groove, number 1, and let's see how it comes through.
Can you feel me now? 'Cause I'm way up in it. My toe bones connect to the foot bone, and the foot bones connect to the ankle bone. My ankle bones connected to the leg bone, and the leg bone connected to my knee. Help me, please. Ow!
No. Yeah, man.
Wow.
By the way, our engineer John just whispered in my ear that the stream is stereo, and it's not going out by Skype, so it is going out stereo. So, and that's a mighty funky groove. I'm digging that for sure.
Because they recorded it the old-fashioned way. Everybody in the room at once performing.
I love that. I love that. That is the way to record. No question about it.
You get the feeling, you get the music, and all I did was polish it. I did do some, by the way, Mr. Engineer, we've got a lot of hiss now since must have that fader up for the Feel the Groove. Suddenly I hear lots of hiss in my ears.
Well, you're getting a audio return, which is over Skype, and it's not what's going out on the stream, so it might be okay.
Well, I can't wait to hear it. So do you think when we hear it on when this podcast comes out that it'll be in stereo on the on a
Yes,
browser?
it will. Yep, it will. Absolutely.
Oh, okay, you'll get a taste of it. All right. The interesting thing is, as a mastering engineer, I try. One of my jobs is to make a recording that translates from everything from iPods to MacBook Pros to the biggest, largest stereo systems. And that's an art. It takes a lot of work to do that. So even though I'm hearing that song through these little earbuds in mono, most of the essence of it came through. So I'm pleased, even with the cross feed coming back. Okay, so this is a group, believe it or not, from Spain.
Really?
And their singer, they love classic soul music. They have a singer from America. I guess he lives in Spain. I guess you can guess who the singer is.
Yeah, so, I can guess. Charlie X says it sounds a bit like Tower of Power, and I agree.
There's a feeling of R&B, funk in there, and I had a lot to do with it. So if you like this kind of music, this is, shall we say, refined mastering in a conservative way. Hasn't been succumbed to the loudness wars. It sounds like you're back in 1970 again, and that's one of my specialties.
Okay. Well, speaking of which, I wanted to mention that somebody in the chat room, it might have scrolled away here, mentioned a quote from your book called Mastering Audio, in which you say, I don't have it now. It's the, it's not how loud you make it, it's how you make it loud.
Very true.
And I think that's a wonderful quote that addresses what you were just talking about. Not following in the footsteps of the loudness war, where you compress the heck out of everything and everything's always at the same volume and it's meant to be played very loud, but you have some dynamic range in there. It can get loud, I'm sure, but it's not always loud. Is that a fair assessment of what you do?
Absolutely, close enough.
Close enough for jazz, all right, or funk.
Oh, definitely for funk. Okay, why don't we move on?
Yeah, go on. Number 2.
Okay, number 2.
I've been playing all the time, dance with strangers on the run, dance with the shadows in my mind. I've been writing different men in every line, but they won't stand still. So should I hide a broken heart, or let the world tear me apart again? They say the gods will have their way. Well, surely if that's true, the only thing to do is hide a broken heart and let the world tear me apart again. They say each dog will have its day. Well, surely if that's true, the only thing to do is love.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, very nice.
This is an album which consists of a great deal of what you would call folk music by a woman, Bella Hardy, who has won 2 years straight the best folk singer in Britain. And this latest album, With the Dawn, as you can see, has taken her to a completely new territory. With a whole band arranged by, I'm losing his name. His name is Ben somebody, who is the producer. And it's just great music and really, really pure. And I would love to get her to sell the 2496 versions. I have 2496 versions of all of these, but most of what's accessible to you are the 1644s on compact disc, which still, I think, sound good. It's just, I've picked albums that I've mastered that I absolutely love, that you can listen to from beginning to end without fatigue and just get more and more out of them every time you hear it.
Mahler Music in the chat room is asking, is that a real brass section? I was going to ask the same question.
Yes, sir. Now, coming through the Skype and all that compression and stuff, it sounds, for that matter, I'm hearing it in mono right now. And Bella's voice, which has a stereo phaser on it, sounds exceptionally phased in mono. This is mostly a taste of the music, folks. I don't think
just a taste, yeah.
It's not going to really tell you much about the sound.
Yeah, I understand. Somebody here was asking, who is this again? Bella Hardy.
Bella Hardy. Put up the her website again. The album is called With the Dawn. I'm not here as a promoter or a marketer. I'm just telling you about artists that I have worked with that just enthrall me, enchant me, that are off the beaten charts that you may not have heard of.
Now, Joe, Joe Whipp in the chat room is asking, how is your technique to make things louder different than what other mastering engineers are doing?
Well, first of all, I don't make it any louder than the loudness potential of the recording itself, which means that given what anything from the year 2000 on up levels are happening in pop music, my masters could be anywhere from 3 to 4 to 5 or more dB lower than what's typically out there. There are a lot of exceptions, but right now on the charts, I'd say there are none on the pop charts. But it's not. We could get into the fact that it's not necessary to bring it up, and talk about the loudness race. But that's another show.
That is another show. We can spend a whole hour on that, and I will have you back to do that because it's a very interesting topic.
Yeah, but to answer the question directly, I'm not trying to be coy, but it takes many years to learn how to use all the processors and things that I have and how not to overuse them. So it's not something I could answer in a moment. I have over 15 analog processors online in front of me. I use 1 or 2 different ones each session that I do. So there's no formula. It's what makes it work right. I hope that answers your question to some extent.
Yeah, to some extent. Well, listen, we've got a few more examples to listen to, but before we do, I would like to take a moment.
For a drone.
It's
I'm
time.
a Drobo.
It's time to thank our sponsor for this episode. And Twit is thrilled to welcome Drobo back to the network. And thankfully, they're a sponsor of Home Theater Geeks. Data is an essential part of the modern home theater and all our lives. And Drobo is safe, simple, and expandable solution for all of your storage needs. Drobo offers a family of external storage arrays that you can either add your own drives to or order them preloaded with storage. Now, I have a Drobo 5N here, and I'm just in the process of setting it up with a Sonos system, which is the whole house wireless audio system. Nothing could have been easier, let me tell you. First of all, it came with some separate drives, and you just throw those in the slots very easily, just slide right on in there. Came up, the setup is painless, very easy. And setting it up with Sonos was no problem at all. I did it in about an hour last night, and setting up one of the new Sonos devices. And it was very easy. I can pick any song or playlist or play everything I want right from my smartphone or computer. It's just a tremendous experience that was seamless and painless. So if you're interested in network-attached storage, either as a media server, file server, or backup solution, you need to really check out the Drobo 5N, which is the one I've got, and it's tremendous. It's easy to use. Just plug it into your switch or router, and you're ready to go. And it works with Plex, and it's great as storage for your Kodi and XBMC setups as well. The 5N also includes a quad-core ARM processor, so you can run BitTorrent or other tools for gathering files across the internet. Whether you've built your own media PC or are using something like a NUC on the front end, Drobo is a great network solution to replace all of your various external hard drives. Drobo makes it easy to set up and streamline your home media server the right way. Drobos are reliable. Data received by your Drobo and not yet written to disk is protected if there's a sudden power loss. Drobos also have an internal eUSB device where data is copied if there's a power failure to protect against long outages, so your data remains safe. They're expandable as well. You can add or replace drives in your Drobo with ease. No tools required, and I can certainly attest to that. Their Beyond RAID technology lets you expand on the fly and mix and match drives. They're also simple. The colored lights on the front of the Drobo communicate status, and they're fast. They support Thunderbolt, Gigabit, and USB 3.0 connections, depending on the model. Some models have one or the other to stream your HD and large media files. Visit drobo.com/twit to learn more and check out their complete line of products. And when you use the code TWIT100, you'll save $100 off the purchase of a Drobo Mini, Drobo 4Bay, or Drobo 5N. That's drobo.com/twit and use the code TWIT100. And we thank Drobo very much for their support of Home Theater Geeks.
You know what's special about Drobo? That's different
what's
from
that?
the other RAID? That you can mix and match different size drives, which is very, very rare in the RAID world.
Exactly. I've got a 4, a 3, and a 2 in my Drobo 5N, actually, and they work seamlessly together. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Okay, so we got another example or two here. So let us listen to something else. I'm digging listening to music, I got to tell you.
How much time do we have? Do we going to make it all through all 8, or do you want me to pick
No,
and choose?
I think not. Pick another one or two.
Okay. Well, let's do some prog rock. Number 5.
Okay.
A Rose for Emily. This is Glass Hammer.
Emily, can't you see there's nothing you can do? There's love you everywhere, but not for you. Her roses are fading now. She keeps her pride somehow. That's all she has, protecting her from pain. And as the years go by, she will grow old and die. The roses in her garden faded away. Not one left for her.
So that's Glass Hammer. If you like progressive rock, these are the guys. Believe it or not, they're Nashville, Tennessee. No, actually, outside of Nashville. But anyway, they're in Tennessee. They've had, oh my God, at least 10 albums, and I think I've mastered all or most of them except for the first couple, probably when I came on board. They're great guys to work with. They record in a purist, not a purist way. Let's just say they record the old-fashioned prog rock way, the way you might have seen Yes do it, except it goes to digital instead of to tape.
Mm-hmm.
And, my job is to make it sound like progressive rock, which I do.
Right. So can you identify one specific thing that you do to optimize the sound? What is one technique that you use to get that sound that you're looking for?
Just one?
Well, you know,
okay. No,
an example.
It's a combination of things, okay? For that song, now mind you, don't use this as a recipe, because even if you had exactly the same gear I have and you patch it exactly the same way, it probably would sound like your sound, not like my sound.
Right.
I mean it.
Right.
Okay.
I agree. In fact, this is why I don't generally post calibration settings on a TV that I review, because even if you get the same model, it'll be a different sample, and those settings will be different.
Oh my God. Well, you know that I have a spectrophotometer, and I calibrate all my video monitors as well.
Do you really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. That's impressive.
Geek.
Okay, so tell us something about how you mastered this album.
Okay, now mind you, if I say, for example, that I always take 5 kilohertz and turn it up 3 dB and all that, that's like saying that you put salt and pepper on your food before you taste it. Okay? So you'd have to hear the original recording in order to know what it is that I'm talking about. But I'm happy to give you an example, something that I might have used on that record to my recollection. So let's just do that. Okay, the signal starts in a DAW. I upsample their 48 kilohertz 24-bit material to 96 kilohertz 32-bit float, because it sounds better with the analog processors seem to have a little bit more headroom. They don't clip quite as strongly, and the filtering, it doesn't have to go through as sharp filtering as it did at 44 or 48. So
this is actually a very good point that I was going to bring up a little later in terms of high-res audio, and why would you upsample something that was delivered to you at 44 or 16 up to 9624 when there's no data up there? But you've just provided at least one reason to do that.
Absolutely, and I have this thing against the high-res mafia. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
It relates to this particular subject. But anyway, so I upsample it to 96 kilohertz. I do editing, cleanup, assemble it, all the songs. And then I find the loudest and most impacting song on the album and start there so that everything can be in proportion to that. I might use some digital equalization. Then it goes out through a D to A converter and goes to my analog chain. The first device in this chain might be, do you want me to tell you prices? Let's just say there's thousands. No, let's just say there's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars of gear between the source and the capture, okay?
Yep,
so
yep.
It might go through a device. These are all pro devices that you might not have heard of, folks.
Yeah.
A device made by Mazalek, which is a 3-band analog compressor that's quite warm, but it's not just a compressor. It's a compressor and expander. Each band can be used either as a downward compressor or an upward expander. So depending on how much impact and snap I want in the material, if it was originally a little bit too compressed, I might decompress it inside the Mazalek. I might decompress the midband, compress the low band, and do a soft, subtle correction of the cymbals if they're a little bit too in your face, because their monitors are not as accurate as mine, and they didn't necessarily know it. Okay, might go through that. Might go through the case stereo process, which I've invented, and anybody else has access to it now that it's a plugin. So it's no longer exclusive to me. It then would go to a couple of analog equalizers, the Better Maker I mentioned, or Dangerous Backs. And then it goes back to a D to A converter. I'm sorry.
An A to D.
A to D, my mistake. It comes in through an A to D, at which point I capture that pre-limiter. And then if I feel that we can make it louder without hurting it, I might put it through a dB of digital peak limiting, no more than a dB of gain reduction there. Then it gets captured at 24 bits, 96 kilohertz. Every part of the chain is properly dithered. So if there's, all the calculations are done at a much higher precision than 24-bit. So they have to be dithered to 24 bits whenever it gets truncated. And so nothing is truncated along the way. I then put it through a sample rate converter by Daniel Weiss called the Sericon, which I think is the world's best. Getting tired now? And that becomes new files, which are 32-bit float, 44.1 kilohertz. I then choose and pick the very best dither for a 16-bit, and it becomes a compact disc. How's that?
That's very good. Let me ask you this. Do you also generate high-res files out of those analogs, like 2496, I would imagine?
You betcha. Now, mind you, we're going to get into this high-res mafia thing and issues with HD tracks and people who like to look at their FFTs instead of listening, if you want to get.
We're going to get to that in just a minute.
Okay.
User 3344 asks, so what software does the K-Stereo and Surround plugin work with? I assume you're talking about Pro Tools or something along those lines?
K-Surround is not available yet as a plugin. You have to buy a $10,000 box from Z Systems to do that. But the K-Stereo is a VST, and it's currently available on the UAD platform if you're a DAW user. But you can even put K-Stereo onto your J-River, because J-River accepts VSTs. I don't know about the backside, but it'll work. Oh, gosh. It might work. I haven't tried it.
Okay.
It'll work on the PC side.
Right. Let's see. Douglas Waits again asked, what does Bob use for playback usually? Streaming from Sequoia?
Aha. You mean in good old-fashioned enjoyable playback at home?
Well, that's a good question, Douglas. Doug did not specify that.
Well, J-River for playback.
Okay. Rusty Bones is asking, what album or piece of music are you most fond of?
Let's play it now.
All right, good.
Okay, number 8, Egypt by Air, Bombay Dub Orchestra. How about that?
Sure.
Over
Yeah.
75 real live musicians participated in this album.
Wow. When they say
They're-
orchestra, they're not kidding.
Yes, well, it's assembled in overdubbed. I have to admit that.
Oh, okay. So it's not all at once.
Yeah, 2 composers from Britain who are partners in London, Gary Hughes and Andrew T. McKay, are very fond of Indian music. And they came up with this concept that they invented called the Bombay Dub Orchestra. They fly to India with their arrangements, and they hire some of the finest musicians in India playing all of the acoustic instruments, big string sections, tablas, vocalists, and they
Sitar,
record it.
vina, that sort of stuff.
You name it. And they record it. Then they go back to London and what was that? And they overdub their synthesized bass and rhythm parts on top of the rhythm that's there in a very tasteful way. But, well, I'll give you a secret. I took that super deep bass and extended it using a subharmonic synthesizer so it goes down to the center of the earth. And if you've got if you've got subs, this thing just zings.
Wow.
It's enjoyable, very dynamic, and very beautiful. And there are 3 albums on 6 Degrees Records. I'd love to see the 2496s released for that too.
So this was a question that somebody asked earlier about the woman whose name Bella Hardy.
Yeah.
You know, you said you wish that she would release 2496 and Bombay Dub Orchestra the same. You have those files. It's just up to them whether or not they want to release them, right?
Well, they would consider it, but HD Tracks would not permit it because of the high-res mafia. People who say, well, I see this brick wall at 22.05 kilohertz. But what they don't realize is that if they get my 2496s, it's 3, maybe 4 generations earlier than what they would get on CD. Think about that. Okay?
Yeah.
Without the extreme filtering. And it sounds more open, warmer, better, and deeper. Not as good, perhaps, as something that was originally recorded at 96 kilohertz. That's a debatable question. But let's just say possible. But certainly better than the CD. So there are a few sites that are allowing this now. I'm promoting it and pushing it because some of my best work is not being heard as good as it could be.
Well, let's then spend the last 12 minutes or so, 15 minutes we have to talking about high-res audio, the high-res mafia. I still want to know what you mean by that exactly.
Okay, what I mean by the high-res mafia, do you mind if I interrupt?
Please.
Okay. He doesn't mind. He stopped.
I don't mind. I stopped.
Yeah. The high-res, what I call the high-res mafia are the people who listen with their eyes and not their ears. Okay?
What do you mean by that?
Okay, well, this 176.4 kilohertz. It's got to be twice as good as 96 kilohertz. And I see harmonics going out to 40K, so it must be better. Okay? I've done the tests. I've done the experiments. I've done the listening. I started out quite prejudiced in the direction of, hey, 96 does sound better than 44 because I can hear it. But I've come to the conclusion that it's in the DACs, because the better the D to A converter, the better the filtering in the DAC, some of the discrete DACs, the less the difference between the 44.1 original, perhaps, that I have, and the 96 upsampled, or between the 96 downsampled to 44, and re-upsampled to 96. I'm serious. Done it. Line tested it.
I'm sorry. I was just Go right ahead.
So basically, I've reached the position that it's great to use high res because there are fewer losses along the way. Absolutely. And there are many reasons why. And processes such as digital compression and expansion and equalization have less distortion when you process at the higher sample rate. But the issue has always been in the D to A converters at the end. Many of them use these cheap chips with poorer filters. And if we can upsample for those, the filters are exercised a lot less, and so they sound better. And also, you don't have that sharp cutoff and the problems with the sharp cutoff. So,
well, this is actually very interesting because even if there isn't any information above 20 kilohertz in the audio band, which there wouldn't be if you started with a 44.1 file and then upsampled it, you get a bunch of zero.
To be exact, 22.05 kilohertz, but
yeah,
that's a few kilohertz between friends.
Close. Yeah, what's a kilohertz between friends, right? But even though there's no information up there, what you're saying is the advantage or the benefit of resampling up to a higher sample rate aren't necessarily in that you will get, or you don't
gain information that wasn't there.
Right. But what you're gaining is gentler filters, other benefits.
That's correct. I couldn't have said it better myself, Scott.
Well, there you go. And let me ask you then about high-res recording. Recording digitally at 96 kilohertz, 24 bits, as opposed to upsampling. Do you get benefit from recording at that higher rate on new material?
I think the A to D sound better. I couldn't say why. Maybe it's because of the filter. So there's no question that my clients who send me material mixed at 44.1K, maybe they could have gotten more open sounding results if they had mixed at the higher rate. So I do think there is a benefit. It's just that I don't want to close off the benefits that you can get from getting the masters that I could provide for you that are 3 generations earlier than what you can get on CD.
What do you mean by that? Why are the masters you provide 3 generations earlier than what you would otherwise get? Okay,
let's count the steps. Maybe it's not 3. Let's say that the master I finally produce is generation 1, 2496. You get sample rate converted down to 44, not just generations, but processes. Yeah. It gets sample rate converted down to 32-bit float, 44.1 kilohertz. That's a filter there. Then it gets dithered to 16-bit to fit on the CD. And then it gets reproduced through the additional sharp filter in your DAC. So there's a lot more that it goes through compared to the 96K. So
I see.
I'm stretching the word generation.
All right. Okay, I can dig it. Douglas Waits again asks, are you excited about MQA, this technology from Meridian?
I'm skeptical and waiting to hear it.
You're skeptical and hear it. Okay. You haven't had a chance to hear it yet? They play it at trade shows and so on?
I'm down in Florida, and Bob Stewart hasn't deigned to send me one yet. Let me think. It's coming. What are those headphones you're wearing? They look like those two-ways from the Dharmas.
No, these are from Bob Heil.
Okay. Heil.
They're the Heil ProSet 3s. He's famous for microphones, but he recently also got into the headphone business, and these are actually quite good. At least for podcasting, very lightweight, have a good sound. So I'm happy with them.
Have you sent it to Tile for analysis?
I don't know if I don't know if Tile Hertzens, who's been a guest on this show quite a few times, he's one of my most popular guests, and how I got to you, actually, and I thank him for that. I don't remember if he's looked at these or listened to these yet or not. I'll have to ask him.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe Whip is asking, how do you feel about the ladder DACs, such as Multibit from Shit, the company?
Okay, well, they're a lot better than I thought they would be. I think that the quality goes in before the name goes on. And that's what counts.
In that case, especially, huh?
Yeah. It's,
okay.
I might put together a DAC from parts using exactly the same filters and components that he does. And it might not necessarily sound as good because maybe I couldn't lay out the PC board as well. Maybe I couldn't get his load jitter a clock that's in it, all kinds of possibilities. So I was quite surprised. Tyler and I shot out the shit, I mean.
Yeah,
against,
that's what it's called. We can say it because it's the name of the company.
Against the, what is that company that makes these fancy clocks? I forget the name. But anyway, a very high-end standard Delta Sigma DAC. And we did a double-blind test when I was over at Tyle's house. And we couldn't pass it. And I was quite surprised. I thought that I would hear a dramatic difference. Okay, things were matched to less than 1/10 of a dB. And I was impressed. But I'm against them theoretically, okay? I sit on the side that there's no need to recreate the world again, okay? The world has moved on past ladder DACs. But a well-done NOS, no, that's not an NOS DAC. He can run it at all the sample rates you want. I don't know if he does upsampling or not. But anyway, it's a decent filter. He's done a Mike Moffitt, right? Of shit.
Yeah.
Has done a very nice job, and it's well done. So, half of it is that you have to, if you have a really good design, and maybe you do one thing wrong, like use the ladder, but everything else is good. You could beat a poorly designed Delta Sigma.
Just to remind us, for those who don't know, what a ladder DAC is.
Okay. An attenuator is built of 2 resistors, one in series and one in parallel. Or if it's balanced, 3 resistors, or even 4. It's possible to laser trim these resistors so that each step of a 24-bit signal is carefully represented. You get 6 dB per step, precisely. And if you do this real well, then you could design a DAC like the old-fashioned DACs before they went to Delta Sigma, like before the 1-bit DACs, and literally call it a multi-bit DAC. That's another name for a ladder DAC. Each bit goes into a different attenuator stage and comes out different. Now, if you don't get it right, you can get monotonicity errors and low-level distortion errors and all kinds of things. But I don't have a shit DAC in front of me, so I can't measure it to tell you. But I will say I was pleasantly surprised, despite my biases and prejudices against the ladder DAC. It sounded just really good.
You mentioned 1-bit, and that reminded me of SACD or DSD, direct stream digital, as opposed to multi-bit PCM. Where do you stand on that decision?
Well, the first thing is practicality. The digital room correction that I run must be run PCM. So with that system, I cannot play an SACD or native DSD natively. It has to pass through a PCM stage. I don't want to have to do that if I can avoid it. That's a practical reason. The other is I've done the shootouts, and you can do the shootouts too. Let me tell you how you could prove it to yourself, regardless of the theories, okay? Who is out there is familiar with 2L recordings from Norway?
I certainly am. They produce some beautiful recordings.
Absolutely incredible recordings. Now, Morton who is a friend of mine, records his original material in a format called DXD, but it's really high bit rate PCM, okay?
Right.
It's 24-bit, 352 kilohertz sampling, okay?
Wow.
Now, this is the original. He then uses the Vice sample rate converter, the same sample rate converter that I use, to either convert it to DSD, and he can go down in any number of stages, or to convert it to lower sample rate PCM. Now, if you trust the integrity of the Vice gear, and we leave that out of the equation, it's possible for you to listen. You could listen to the 352 kilohertz original. I don't know if he releases that, but you can listen to a 192 certainly, or a 176.4, I forget which. And you can listen to the SACD that he's released on a number of projects. Put the Blu-ray on, put the SACD on, switch between them, and tell me which one has better transient response, more definition, and better depth. The SACD sounds better than CD in this comparison. It's warm, inviting, slightly colored, but it's not accurate. That's what I hear. Sorry for interrupting. Very few people have the opportunity to compare apples to apples. And this is the closest you can ever get. An original recording, carefully sampled to two different media. You could blame the Vice processor if you want on it. Now, people are saying, okay, we got to record native DSD, and some of my best friends, Michael Bishop of Telarc, records native DSD now. It sounds fine. It's a nice, wonderful medium. I think it's just slightly colored compared to high sample rate PCM. That's my position. Everybody has, it's a religious argument, really.
Sure. SoundPro69 asks, have you ever heard ambiphonics, not to be confused with ambisonics? How would it compare to the best ITU multi-channel for specific recreating a believable orchestral or operatic sound field?
Honestly, I don't remember what ambiphonics is. I know what ambisonics is, but I don't know what ambiphonics is.
You know, I don't either, SoundPro69. I know ambisonics as well, but give me a little more info on that.
Can you type that fast?
That's the question. That is the question. Meanwhile, Beatmaster asks, is mastering of synthesized instruments easier these days as the quality of the emulators has risen, or do they still tend to need more post-processing to sound right?
Oh, God. They still need more post-processing, and they haven't reached the stage where they sound right. People, I have a client who spent a year fine-tuning his sample drum set, editing every single note, beat by beat by beat, and then send me his mix with that, okay? In the amount of labor and time, because he wanted to, I guess because he wanted to save the money on a real drum set. In the amount of time, he could have recorded a real drum set with a great feel by a great drummer in a great room in a couple of hours compared to the year that he spent doing that. So,
right.
You know, it's kind of ridiculous. But a lot of the musicians that I work with, some of them send all synthesized material. It keeps on getting better and better. Many of the emulators are doing much better than ever before, and I'm grateful for that. But I do have to post-process them, and in many cases, I'll send this material. I'll find this material to lack some depth, to sound a little bit harsh. Often is the case, not always, but a little bit harsh. It's getting better in that respect. And I'll pass it through my tubes and maybe the case stereo, and it sounds more organic. But it doesn't sound as good as the true organic original instrument that it's emulating. When you listen to a high-end audiophile system.
Right.
And if you're driving down Broadway at 50 miles an hour, I think you wouldn't hear the difference.
Right. Driving down the road in a car and listening, that's another story. SoundPro69 sent me the link to ambiphonics by a guy named Ralph Glasgow, The Science of Domestic Concert Hall Design. We'll have to do some research on that and see if we can come up with some interesting things to say about that. But for the moment, we are pretty much out of time. I'd like to play one
Holy
more.
cow.
Can you believe it?
Yeah. Time flies when you're having fun.
I know. Pick one more of the audio tracks that you sent me, so we can start.
Okay,
we can end with some music.
Here's something that I'm proud of. How many of you have heard of Kevin Gilbert? Raise your hands. He's a
I haven't
very
heard.
okay. Well, he's he's dead now. He's been dead for a long time, but he still lives on in his recordings. And there have been a number of audiophile recordings, and he's kind of a cult figure. I had the privilege of taking producer Mark Hornsby's single, "A Long Day's Life," which was combined Kevin's voice that Kevin had recorded, along with a working piano track, and Mark arranged it for the full orchestra and recorded the London Symphony Orchestra and created the production that Kevin had dreamed of. So that's on one of the issues that you can find. So let's hear a little piece of "A Long Day's Life," a very famous piece by progressive rock artist Kevin Gilbert. Well, that suffered particularly on my playback here. We'll see how well it comes through the data compression on your website. But there is a 2496 of that. I don't know if anybody will release it. And Mark, go ahead.
But it does exist, so they could release it.
And it would pass the high-res mafia.
It actually has information above 20K?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Wow. And so that was made by taking a pre-existing recording and mixing it with a modern recording of the background with the London Symphony Orchestra. It's amazing.
And it came out really well. Yeah.
Really well. Really
now,
well.
I think it's that there's some particular at the Kevin Gilbert website, you can order a special 3-disc edition and my version with Mark Hornsby's. We should say Mark Hornsby's version, mastered by me, is on that record. Yeah.
Wow. Well, listen, it's been a fantastic hour. I want to thank you so much for being here. The time just flies, doesn't it?
And if anybody has any questions, tell them to get on my Facebook page. Bob
okay.
Katz.
And just BOBKATZ, Bob Katz. That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Bob, thank you so much for being here. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, I enjoyed every minute. Thank you very much, Scott.
You bet. Hang on. Let me do a little housekeeping here, and then I got one more thing to do with you. But in addition to his Facebook page, Bob Katz, you can also go to his website, Digido, Digido.com, which is short for his company, Digital Domain. And you can always find me, of course, at avsforum.com. You can email me at scott@twit.tv, and you can follow me on Twitter at htgeekscott and at avsforum. And you can always find previous episodes of Home Theater Geeks right here at twit.tv/htg and on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/twit Home Theater Geeks. Next week, my guest geek is scheduled to be Douglas Trumbull, the legendary special effects wizard and movie technology pioneer, to talk about his career and what he's working on these days. It's going to be an amazing show, so I do hope you will join us for that. Until then, geek out.